magic in the air. בכל הגוף בוער. Feel the magic in the air.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another World Cup group preview here on the Planet Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Reed, along with my co-host, Dylan. Today we are talking about Group D. I think this is like our fourth group to record in the last 4 days or so, 5 days.
D is the fourth letter in the alphabet, so yeah.
Yeah. Trying to think when did we do group? We did Group B, then Group A, then C yesterday, and now D. But we're just rolling
less
through.
Than a week.
Yeah, less than a week for sure. Group D consists of the defending champions France, and then Australia, who advanced via playoff. I'm pretty sure. Is that right?
Yes.
Denmark and then Tunisia. We have it here somewhere. They.
I want to say it was our side of the Atlantic.
Oh yeah, they
I can't
drew
remember
Peru.
who,
they drew Peru in a playoff and then beat them 5-4 on penalties to go through.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
No, I remember watching just the penalties portion, so I should have known that.
Dylan, let's be honest. This group's pretty straightforward if we're looking at it on paper.
All right, I will say this now. If we go over 30 minutes on this, I apologize to everyone. You can probably just fast forward through Tunisia and Australia and jump to the other two and then listen to our predictions at the end if you can't predict this yourself.
Yeah. The only iffy thing that could go on here is there's like this weird voodoo thing with defending champs right now, but we'll talk about that here in a second. Let's start with Australia. They're managed by Graham Arnold, captained by Matthew Ryan. I have no idea who either of those people are. They're ranked 38th in the FIFA ranking, so good for them. They are in the Asian qualifying confederation thing. Oceania, yeah, whatever it is. They're apparently the fourth-ranked team in the AFC behind Iran, Japan, and South Korea. They had a little bit of a difficult time with their second qualifying round, but they absolutely ran train through Kuwait, Jordan, Nepal, and Chinese Taipei. Saudi Arabia and Japan finished ahead of them in the second qualifying round. Both of those teams are also in the World Cup, obviously, so they were third out of that group. But man, if they get through this group, then it'll be like a 16 beating, maybe not a 16 beating a 1, but let's say like a 15 beating a 2, like a good old Mizzou first round loss. Yeah, there's the reaction I was looking for.
We had to do that, huh? Freshman year, that was so much fun. So glad I was there for that.
I bet you were. So Australia, they haven't passed the group stage since 1982. They haven't scored a goal in a game since 1982. Oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong team. Sorry, guys. Australia. I forgot to switch out our Google Doc. I'm talking about a European team right now. Australia, they start off with France. I think they might be demoralized pretty quickly in this first round. Dylan, you got anything on Australia?
Other than you didn't know who Matthew Ryan was. He was a long-time Brighton keeper, and apparently you're not watching enough Champions League because he plays for Copenhagen.
Graham Arnold?
Matthew
Ryan. Okay.
And not the benched Indianapolis Colts quarterback. It is a different Matthew Ryan. And I say that half kidding. I somewhat remember the name, so I was like, where do I know him from other than the Indianapolis Colts? I don't even know if he's the goalie playing for Copenhagen right now, so I'm giving you a hard time, but he could very well be their backup. He's played in 6 games this year. Might not even be Champions League games. But
he does play for Copenhagen. Yeah, you're right.
I did remember the name from somewhere, but it was not from Copenhagen. It was definitely from when he was at Brighton. He did play a ton at Brighton, and a spell at Arsenal a couple years back. So he's not a complete nobody, but when you compare it to what he's going up against in this league or in this group, it's not a pretty.
He's going to be busy
for Australia.
He's going to be real busy. Yeah. I don't know how Australia plays at all. They've got a lot of guys in the Australian league.
We should really bring on
just-
Nick for all of the Asian qualifying teams because that's like what
we
he
should
follows the most. We really should have, or at least just had him write a little synopsis for us and just read it word for word and acted like we knew what we were talking about. Because unfortunately, a lot of it, to be completely honest, like I'll watch any soccer that's on, but these are games. The qualifiers are starting at like 7 a.m. my time. Even worse for you. Like it's just tough. It is very truly tough to follow. It's not that I think completely lesser of them as sides, but historically they have struggled, and with the time zone it's in, it's honestly it's just really hard to keep up on. So this is a side. I remember Australia being a kind of one of those middling teams in like the 2010, 2014 time. However, in the last 8 years, I haven't really heard about the Australian national team until I found out they were in a playoff against Peru to make it to the World Cup. So yeah, I don't really feel qualified to speak. I feel more qualified, frankly, to speak on Tunisia than I do Australia, honestly. Just because the matches I actually watch. Oh, geez, just absolutely threw me on the spot. So I feel qualified because I put notes together before, and now I need to find my notes, and I can't find my notes. But I do. Tunisia had a very disappointing AFCON. It was a team that people were a little excited about going into AFCON. They are typically.
I think they're like the second ranked.
They're
AFCON
typically
team.
one of the top 3 or 4 sides in AFCON, but they finished third in their group that had nobody of note in it at all. The only
Put some
reason
respect on Molly's name, baby. Put some respect on Molly's name.
Yeah, you watch a lot of Mali football, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the only reason they were even able to advance was finishing third, but with a positive goal differential, which is in most of those tournaments kind of the deciding factor on how some of those third place teams advance. And that was mainly because of who was in their group. They got to play Mauritania, who has never been a very successful side. So it's a team that, they are ranked 30th in the FIFA World Ranking, so they're not a complete nobody by any means. I think they are much more likely to contend with the other 2 sides in a individual football match than Australia is, for sure. Obviously, not to spoil my France preview for anybody sitting on the edge of their seats, but I don't think anybody really competes with France in this group. But I could see Tunisia possibly pulling a draw out of Denmark and securing a win against Australia. So I see them comfortably in third, and maybe possibly they can flirt with second. I've seen a lot of preview stuff on this group. Don't sleep on Tunisia. Don't sleep on Tunisia. But I think Denmark is a much better side. World Cup qualifying was a breeze for Tunisia for the most part. They did kind of rebound in their final qualifying game against Mali after not really performing against them in AFCON. So they're certainly not a bad side. I don't want to disrespect them by saying I don't think they have a very good chance in advancing. However, when you look at the success Denmark had at Euros and the success France had at obviously the last World Cup, and I think everybody will agree they're a top 2 talented team, but there are very strong arguments for them being the most talented team, and I think I would side that way. So I don't really see Tunisia being a real threat at all.
Yeah. Beautiful country. Beautiful North African country. Shares a Mediterranean coast with Morocco, I believe. Maybe Algeria.
Would love to go to both.
Up there.
Would love to go to both of those countries.
Really, really beautiful looking country. But in terms of this group, that's really all I got.
I would like to travel there.
Shaqiri, they've got Shaqiri from Köln, I think, in Germany, however you say that club's name. But the two big boys in this group are Denmark and France. We will start talking about Denmark. One of my favorite Tottenham players, past and present. Both of them play for the Denmark national team, and that's Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, the current Tottenham player, and then obviously Christian Eriksen, formerly of Spurs. So this is a team that they just, every time I feel like I watch them, the Denmark team is like the first team that I watched when I decided to become a soccer fan. I was watching the game where Christian Eriksen died on the field essentially and was like, all right, I'm gonna watch the rest of this tournament. I followed Denmark. They made a great run. They didn't win it, but throughout qualifying, I mean, they looked unstoppable, and they've been hot this year. It's just one of those nations, kind of like Netherlands, that just feels like once they all get in the National League camp, they just all put it together. They love playing together. They play well together. It's weird. Højbjerg takes on like a completely different role with the Denmark team than he does with Tottenham. He's much more of a creative playmaker for Denmark, which kind of strikes me as odd when I watch him sometimes with Tottenham. He has shown flashes of it this year, but by no means would I consider him flirting with being a number 10. But that's kind of him and Eriksen both playing a very creative role for Denmark. It's a team that's coached really well, and they've beaten France twice in the last 5 months. So take with that what you will. I know it's the Nations League or whatever. It hasn't been taken very seriously by a lot of the top players. However, they can compete with France on their day if France isn't at their best. So kind of a trendy like 9th, 10th, 11th best odds country, I feel like. I definitely see them getting out of this group, and I can see them winning it, quite frankly, if France is just a little bit off their game. So what do you have to say about Denmark, Dylan?
This is going to be super contrarian, but I mean, as I said in my little Tunisia blurb, I think Denmark advances. I don't think they're ready to win this group over France. I do think a lot of that success has to go with it being in Nations League, to be honest. It's just not something that's super cared about. They're trying to make it something teams care about by having implications of doing well at it. But I'm not ready to put too much stock in Nations League games at this point. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I'm just not ready to put a ton of stock in it. The other thing I'm not ready to put a ton of stock into for Denmark is that Euro run. And I know that might not be fair necessarily. However, they started group 0-2, lost to Finland, who they should be the better side, lost to Belgium, who was, I think, probably number 1 in the world at that point in time. I'm pretty sure that's when Belgium was still number 1. So that's an understandable loss. But when you look at who they won their next 3 against, it's Russia, Wales, and the Czech Republic. Just nothing there excites me. And they played a very good game against England and narrowly lost. So I'm not trying to take away from their successes at Euro. They did everything they had to do, did everything they could, and came out better for it with a semifinal appearance. But by no means does it put me in a position where I think they should be ranked 10th in the world or ranked 10th in the odds at this point in time. I think they're a perfectly solid side. It is a side that if the U.S. drew, I would not be thrilled having to play them, especially with the way the U.S. has been playing. So again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Denmark per se. I am just hesitant for the people that are saying this is a team I could see making a semifinal run. I just don't see that in this side. I haven't seen them perform on a big stage against those elite teams in a manner that makes me think they can do that. Like winning a round of 16 against Wales 4-0 at a neutral site just doesn't instill like boatloads of confidence. Yes, Wales is a team that qualified for the World Cup, but it's a team that Denmark should be beating 9 out of 10 times at this point in time. So I get the excitement. I think it was a very fun story. I was massively pulling for them in Euros throughout. I wish they would have beat England. But I just am a little hesitant to turn that past love for them into a real belief that they'll make any true noise in the World Cup at this point.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily peg them to make a semifinal run. Speaking in terms of the group, I definitely see them getting out of this group.
Absolutely. I do agree with that for sure. And
depending on who would they match up with if they got second in this group? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't. I have it pulled up though, so I should be able to find it pretty quick.
I just think Denmark's one of those teams that there's something to be said in soccer about teams that just play well and don't make mistakes, don't beat themselves, and they're not going to be. I don't see them as a team that gets upset like in England, who's susceptible to lose to lesser competition.
Right.
They've got experience. They've got camaraderie. How damn it, that word just completely came out. Camaraderie. Yeah, that.
That one.
Yes.
Tough scene.
I've spoken too many words in the last 5 days. It's just a solid team. Kind of like, this is maybe not the best comparison, but kind of like a Brentford in the Premier League, just a team that over the past year and a half, you just know that they can beat you. And despite Brentford's result this past weekend, they're always going to play a solid game, and I see them for sure getting out of this group. But despite that, maybe a round of 16 win, but probably nothing past that.
Yeah, like the reason I have issue with kind of where they stand in all of it is, like, I think you said this, or maybe I did. They're 10th favorite. Whatever the proper grammar is. We are struggling this evening. But they're 10th, and at almost twice as long odds is Croatia, who, if I'm not mistaken, made the finals last time. And
there's a big drop from
I just
Denmark
don't
to Croatia in the odds, which is kind of strange to me.
I just don't that's where I'm like, I don't believe in Denmark to this level. I absolutely think they get out of the group. Without a doubt, I think they get out of the group. I'd be really, like I said, it's been a semi-hot pick seeing Tunisia, but I'd be pretty stunned if they did get knocked out in group stage. I think their most likely exit is group stage when you look at odds, which is surprising. Like, you have better odds to get them knocked out at the round of 16, and I'm pretty sure they'll match up against Argentina, I believe, is Group C. Group C should be the opposite matchup, and they're not beating Argentina. So, I just don't necessarily understand where all of this confidence in Denmark is coming from. I think it was the attractiveness.
Because I like them, damn it.
No, not even just you. Just like everybody's on that same train, it feels like. And maybe I'm looking at it too much through a betting lens and not as much through a fan lens. I'm just not seeing a legitimate run coming out of this team. But I 100% agree. I don't think there's any real way they don't make it out of group.
You want to talk about the big boys?
I think I am much higher on France than many people are. I understand. Again, I am taking Nations League with a massive grain of salt. In my opinion, I think technically right now they're the number 4 team in the world. I don't know how you have.
Really?
Yeah, because Argentina jumped them. I don't know how you have Belgium ahead of them. As much as I like Argentina and I'm rooting for Argentina, I don't know how you have Argentina over them. If you want to have Brazil, there's arguments to be made there, but I think those are the clear 1-2. I think France is getting, and I understand the curse on past winners. But I just think there are so many things that happened with those past winners. They all won like at the peak or slightly after the peak of their individual teams' generations. So rebounding the next year was incredibly hard. I mean, this France team was pretty young overall, and especially where their goals came from. And Mbappe when they won last. So I don't see it being a hard like transition or anything into the new World Cup for them. I see them absolutely hitting the ground running. They have, I mean, talent oozing at the pores. I think we talked about for some of the bigger teams, the transfer market value. They have the second most expensive national team, if you will. And they're the third odds for good reasons. They have a very good keeper. Obviously, you know all about him. And sometimes those teams that have elite scoring don't necessarily have that back line or goalkeeping presence at all times. I think that's kind of a general somewhat concern with Argentina is how that back line and keeper will hold up. And I think that's where France is far and away better than Argentina. And I don't think they're worse than Argentina at scoring. So I do think there's a little bit too much weight possibly put into this voodoo past winner curse conversation, because I just don't see any way in the world that affects this France team. They're just far and away in my opinion, I think they're the most talented team. I'm a huge Brazil fan this year going around. Obviously, lots of ties to Newcastle, but I am willing to admit I think France is the most talented team in this World Cup, and having them at third odds and fourth ranked in the world just seems a little unfair and a little weighted towards Nations League, which is fairly meaningless and a curse.
I think with France, they are more talented this year than when they won the World Cup in 2018. At least more players in their prime, perhaps. They obviously have Karim Benzema, who we haven't mentioned on this podcast, just won the Ballon d'Or. So congrats, Karim, on that, I suppose. They also have Kylian Mbappe, obviously the most dynamic player in the world. Maybe not, I don't know. The Haaland-Mbappe debate will be the next Messi-Ronaldo, maybe on a smaller scale, but it'll kind of be that contentious debate. However, there's no denying that the electricity of Kylian Mbappe. They also have Aurelien Tchouameni kind of playing that CDM role. They got Christopher Nkunku, Saliba, Varane at the back. They've got Lloris, and then Mike, I forgot what his last name is, for AC Milan, who just won Serie A last year. They're littered with talent everywhere. I think with Argentina, with France, the question is, how is all this talent going to gel together? Are there too many personalities? You've got weird stuff going on with Pogba right now.
Good save.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, just as a team that just won a title. I know it was 4 years ago, but it's just hard to go do that again. I have no question about them getting out of this group. You brought up a great point about previous winners, whether it be 2006 Italy, who did they even make the 2010 World Cup? They just didn't get out of their group. But that 2006 team, it was veterans all over the pitch, and same with Spain in 14, and Spain in 10. It's a team that's young, that's fast, that's athletic. I think they're going to be hungry, and also has experience. So it's a recipe for success, at least in the group. I think the thought with maybe them going up versus an Argentina or Brazil is, Brazil can almost match them talent for talent. With Argentina, is it going to have just like this messy takeover? Yeah, I think that's really the only shot Argentina has to win the World Cup and to beat a team like France, is if Messi has 2 goals and an assist in a game versus them. So talent-wise, I think they're going to trump the competition in this group, and It's their appointment television without a doubt. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, like I tend to look at soccer through a betting lens a lot, and that's where I really struggle with where France has been pegged behind Argentina at this point. I mean, they will win this group. I mean, if you said there's a chance they don't, but I would be stunned, and I don't think any odds makers are making odds with the chance that they don't win this group. So then they match up with Group C runner-up, which is like going to be Mexico or Poland, who they should certainly run through. And then they match up with Group B winner or Group A runner-up, who is likely going to be England, as much as I would like to say the U.S. could win the group. Will most likely be England, who they should certainly beat. And if it is the U.S. somehow, they should certainly beat. So, like, they almost, in my opinion, have, barring any confusions or weirdness, a free run to the semifinals, and at that point I believe they would probably face it's like Spain or Germany or who's Group H, like Ghana, Portugal, Uruguay. Like, there's just such a good friendly road to the finals for them. I'm kind of missing where they're not the odds-on favorite. Like, again, I like Brazil more. I think neutral field, one game, maybe because I'm Brazil biased, I probably put my money on Brazil, but like with the road that it looks like France likely would have to a final, it's just really confusing and surprising to me that they're at where they're at with this kind of talent. It is an absurd embarrassment of riches throughout that team. And they certainly have the experience because they just won it. So I don't know. Again, I don't know if it's Nations League. I don't know if it's the fact that they just come off a win. Like, I would love to know if they would have lost in the finals and in the Russia World Cup. Like, where do they sit odds?
If they would have been favorite, yeah.
Yeah, like are we actually taking that into account? Because if we are, that's silly, because the trend is they don't make it out of group. Like, this team's making it out of group. So, like, that curse is just useless and pretty worthless at this point in my mind. And because once it comes down to a knockout stage, I think it's harder to catch a team sleeping. I think the time you catch those former winners sleeping is in the group. But if they make it out of the group, I think they're just too talented to lose to a lot of those teams they would face off against in the knockout stages. So it's surprising. I get there's question marks because of Nations League, but I don't think there's enough evidence for me to believe that they're not at least top two, in my opinion, to win the World Cup.
There's been 2 back-to-back World Cup winners in the history of the tournament. Do you know who they are? Just guess guess 2 countries.
Italy.
That's one of them.
And Argentina.
Italy and Brazil. Italy did it in 34 and 38, and Brazil did it in 58 and 62. And that is the last time it was done. So it's difficult to do, obviously, in any sport, any competition, to win twice in a row, even if there is a 4-year gap. It's difficult. Everybody's going to be gunning for them. They do have, I didn't even realize kind of the path they had to the final. It sounds like their biggest roadblocks potentially would be
England,
that Germany, Spain, England trio,
which are losable games. I'm not saying they're games they can't lose, but they're games that again, in a betting mind, they're favored minus 200 probably to advance. Like, it's not a coin flip game to the sports books, and that's where it's like, all right, if they're relatively heavily favored every knockout, like, how do I end up with them at thirds odds? When we talked about Argentina, while their group is easy, I do think it gets a little dicier for them on that other half of the bracket. I think there is a good chance that stacks a little bit more heavily up top. But I mean, I'm not trying to question Vegas. Sports books aren't in the business of losing and going broke. So every time I think I have an edge, I just try and remind myself that they literally do that for a living, and I make $5-10 bets on soccer games. So don't necessarily take everything I say and go take out a second mortgage on your house right now.
Yeah, I think one of the thoughts with the World Cup, you don't often see the 2 best teams in the world end up in the finals. And I know that just continues on the theme of this defending champion losing in the group, and all these kind of nobody wins back to back, not since the 50s and 60s, but that kind of stuff does matter. Like, there's a reason it hasn't happened. But I think the difference between this French team and other teams is the talent has been taken up a level in many people's minds. I mean, you look at that roster, it is absolutely littered with 40, 50, 60, $170 million players in the case of Kylian Mbappe. So I don't know. I think obviously Vegas knows that they're talented, which is why they have such great odds. But they're also thinking probably, okay, why has this not happened before? Like, will it really happen? There's always upsets in the World Cup. There's weird stuff that always happens. Are they going to, run into just something weird that goes on? So I think if you're listening to this, talent-wise, France is the best team in the world. I think when you place their starting 11 talent with their depth talent, I mean, they've got like 5 center backs that are all over 40 million market value, which is, it's stupid. It's like better than the Netherlands probably, which we talked about in Group A being an embarrassment of riches. Their front line is Dembele, Benzema, and Mbappe. Those on form, those are like the 3 best in their position in the world. So it's stupid. It really is. And if they can put it together and play as a team and really regain that 2018 mojo, it shouldn't even be close, quite frankly. Brazil could probably put up a fight, but Brazil, I think it's just France would be too good if they're both on their day, unless Neymar just does something crazy. So, yeah, I think France and Denmark ultimately pretty easily get out of this group.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so do I. My final predicted standings are, I have France securing 9 points. There's probably a lot of people that think Denmark could come out with a draw, but I got France advancing on 9, Denmark advancing on 6 with the obvious wins against Tunisia and Australia, and then I have Tunisia not quite making it, but securing a win against Australia. I put this together like super confidently, and then I thought about it after, and I was like, not one draw in the whole group. I'm probably not going to have a perfect prediction here. There will be a draw somewhere. Like, you play enough soccer matches, there's going to be a draw. But like, and then I thought about it. I'm like, where can I slide a draw in here? And I was like, I firmly don't believe there will be a draw in this group. Like, it seems like a decently clear separation of ability and talent in this group.
I've got France and Denmark each with 7. France going through on goal differential, Tunisia with 3, and Australia with none.
Do you own a Christian Eriksen Denmark jersey yet?
I don't know.
All right, I'm gonna get a hold of your fiance and make sure you get one for Christmas, because as high as you are on him in Denmark, like, you can't not have that shirt in your closet at this point. Like, you
I agree.
Like, if you Shelby, if you're listening, he agrees. He wants one for Christmas. Hook a brother up.
Yeah. I kind of just did it to be different, but I like Denmark in the group, and I think they can secure like a 1-1 draw against France if they're lucky. But yeah, no starting 11 for this one. Let's be honest.
It's France plus Christian Eriksen for
it's
Reed,
all France.
and I would consider leaving Eriksen off, but probably include him.
I probably wouldn't put Eriksen on, because then you'd have to put him over like Kamavinga, Tchouaméni, and Nkunku probably.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do that?
I don't think so. I'm realistic with it. I'll be a little realistic with it.
That's fair.
Yeah,
we appreciate that here at the Planet Soccer Podcast.
Yep, realistic, smart, educated. That's what we are here, especially on this sport. Never making mistakes, always pronouncing words correctly.
Always remembering where our favorite team resides in England.
Yeah, and how to pronounce everybody's names. That's another thing.
Always
really
on top of our game. Yep.
Well, I think that's it for Group D. What do we have now? 4, 5 left? How many groups are there? Through H? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so whatever that math is. Thanks for listening, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, share, duet, all that stuff. Y'all have a great night. We will talk to y'all later.